All right, welcome over to week 13, day 2. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be reading from two different files at the same time. One of the files, poke.txt, has all the information on Pokemon, their attack, their strength, things like that. The other file has information on the types of the Pokemon. And so the technique that we're going to learn today is how to merge the data on Pokemon from two different files into one centralized database that we're loading off disk. We're going to have a vector of Pokemon that is going to hold all the information on our Pokemon. Currently, this is our little stripped down version of Pokemon. I'm not giving you the full answer for the homework. I'm giving you kind of a stripped down version. And if you can see what I'm doing here and understand it, you can adapt it to solve the problem. I'm not just going to give you the source code that you can copy and paste blindly, because that would mean there's no effort going on inside of your head. So let's do this. First thing we need to do is open up a second file and add types to the Pokemon as well. So I can do that really quickly. And so now instead of one file called ins, we've got two files called ins1 and ins2. One's going to open up poke.txt. The other's going to open up types.txt. And as long as both of these files are valid with our while loop here, then we'll keep going. And if either of them becomes invalid, then we stop before we add the new Pokemon to the database. This is a blank Pokemon. It is a blank slate, a tabula rasa, a Pokemon that has no name, no index, no attack, no defense. As we read from the file, we're going to be filling in all of those details. We also need to add to the Pokemon, we need to give it a type, because we're going to be reading those from types.txt. And that's just going to be a string type 1 and type 2. So it's going to have two types. The second type can be blank. First type is always going to have some data in it. And then when we print it out down here, we just added those as well. If you're wondering how I'm typing so fast, I hit undo because I deleted them, and I'm undoing them instead of retyping them. Okay, so what do we do? Now I'm going to be typing for realsies. All right, so what we need to do is read a line at a time from two files. A very powerful technique. So there's two different ways we can read a line from a file. The standard library method is by doing something like this, string s1, and then get line from the file into s1. So that is the recommended standard way of reading a line. I am kind of irked by it slightly, so I wrote my own version of getLine, which is slightly different and slightly better. It's called readLine, and this is one line of code instead of two lines of code. So this is the standard method, standard library, and this is my own read.h way. So if you don't have read.h on your machine at home, you can get it off GitHub, and there you go. So it's slightly more compact, and it's a little bit more readable, and it allows you to composite it into functions and things like that. So I'm going to leave both of these up here for comparison, but I'm going to be using exclusively readline for the rest of this, because it allows me to write code a lot more quickly and cleanly. But just be aware, you can always rewrite it on two lines instead of one line. It just takes more time and effort, and it's more annoying. Okay, so we've now read one line from poke.txt. We've read one line from types.txt. And what we need to do is, in fact, let me pull up the those files so you can kind of see. Let's see here. Let's see. And if you want to show the columns, it's colon set list down here. That is the vim command that will show you the tabs. So you can see that indeed all of the stuff here is tab delimited. We've got one line of bad data here. Camilla, that is going to have to be discarded because that is not a valid Pokemon. The data is not good. The first thing has to be an integer, for example, and it's not. And I'm going to do a little split here, and I'm going to split it with poke.txt, and there we go. So we've got poke.txt up top here, and we got the types.txt down below. So what we're going to do is we're reading the first line. First time through the loop, we're going to read the first line, which is 1 tab bulba tab 90 tab 50. And what we're going to do is we're going to read one line, we're going to convert it into a string stream, and then we're going to split it into those four different data elements: 1 bulba 90 50. It's a very powerful technique. It's something that you need to get good at. You really do. Like working with IO, is oftentimes people's least favorite part of programming and the most time consuming and most error prone. And especially if you want to do something like data science, where it's a lot of like data input and cleaning and processing and things like that, like you gotta really get good at this stuff. So we read a line from ins1. Ins1 is polka.text. And we've read a line from types.text, ins2, using my readLine function. They do exactly the same thing. They both read one line of code until the new line. And so string 2 is going to hold this line right here, 1 tab, bulba, tab, grass, tab. And string 1 holds 1 tab, bulba, tab, 90, tab, 50. Okay. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to make some string streams. We're going to make string stream sts1 out of S1 and sts2 out of S2. So we've just made 2 string streams. A string stream is a string you can read from as if it was a string that you can read from as if it was a string. Yes, girl.
Have you seen like that blue book that says "Wonder" on cursive?
Yeah, it's by the bed.
Okay.
So we have made 2 string streams here, and we are going to read from them, and we're going to read 1 tab at a time. So I'm going to just use my readLine library because it's better than the standard. So what we're going to do is we're going to say read a string called, I don't know, what is this, Pokedex, and it's going to be equal to readLine from sts1 until a tab. This is the magic right here that allows us to do a tab delimited file. This will read from the string stream. The string stream contains just this little bit of data here, and it's going to read until the first tab character. And so it's going to return a string. Readline always returns a string. It does not return an integer. It returns a string containing 1. And so this is a string. We need to convert it from a string into an integer. And so the function for that is, of course, called stoy, string to integer. And so temp, our tabula rasa Pokemon here, temp's Pokedex is going to be equal to string to integer Pokedex. Maybe I should have come up with a better name. I don't know. I got nothing. So that's a string containing 1, the string 1, and that converts it into the integer 1 and puts it into our temp here. And then if everything goes right, by the end, if no errors occurred, that Pokemon is going to become a real boy like Pinocchio and be added to our database of all Pokemon. Now, there's a more compact way we could do this without using a temporary variable named Pokedex at all. And I can show you like this, a little bit of function magic. Complete word, and there, and there, and there we have it. So 1 line of code, and this is why readLine is superior to getLine, is because you do stuff like this. So it reads 1 line until a tab, so it's reading all of the characters up until tab, and then it converts it from a string to an integer and puts that integer into temp.pokedex. Now, there's a problem with stoy, which is that stoy throws if the first character is not an int, or a digit to be precise. So here it's going to work fine, but on Camilla, it will throw a exception and kill our program. So we're going to handle this the proper way, and we are going to do it with a try catch block. This is what we talked about last time. So we're going to try all this kind of stuff down here and catch anything. We don't care. If any kind of error occurs, we will just continue. So what this means, and let's reformat this. If you want to reformat everything between 2 braces, you hit =Shift 5, and boom, everything is reformatted nicely. So what this code here is going to do, and we're going to have a lot of stoys, right? Because we got attack and defense and stuff. So we are going to try this code, and if any exception occurs, like we have an error, like here, then it throws an exception. This catches the exception. It doesn't kill our program now because we're catching it. Only uncaught exceptions kill your program. This is catching everything, and we're just going to continue back up to the top here. And so essentially what's going to happen is if any error occurs while we're processing a line, we throw that line away and we move on to the next line. It's a great way of being very resilient and handling errors. Sometimes, though, you probably want to print an error and say, like, hey, there was an error when reading the file on line 23. And so if you're doing development, you probably want to know if you're throwing Pokemon away, which you're expecting them to exist. But in general, this is a very resilient way. Technically, you don't need the continue there at all because we're at the bottom of the loop. And when you're at the bottom of the loop, it goes back up to the top of the loop. But I'm going to put the continue in there just to make it clear. Throw the whole line away on an error. So it doesn't do anything, but it's kind of making it clear that if an error occurs, we jump down there and then we just continue back up to the top of the loop. Okay. So we've got Pokedex working fine. Now we need to do the same thing for name. Now, this is the most common bug that I've seen in the 12 o'clock and 2:30 classes, which is they're doing this. And this is not good because it looks fine. All right, looks fine. But what's happening is we are converting the name Bulbasaur, right? Because we're now onto the second column, right? So this is the first column was the Pokedex number. The second column is the Pokemon name. And we're still trying to convert Bulba to an integer. And that's not going to work. That's going to throw. It's going to discard our entire Pokemon. And so you don't want to try converting a string to an integer when it's not an integer. Like, you have to think a little bit, right? And so, like, first column is an int, so we convert it to an int. Second column is a string, and so we don't. We can actually just do this and just read directly from the next column of data, which is Bulba, and that's going to get copied directly into the name of Tim. So that's it. And then the third column is going to be an integer again. Third column is an int. So we just copy and paste this line here and make sure. I saw a lot of copy paste errors today. A lot, like over a dozen copy paste errors where people just copy and paste. Like, we're cool, we're done. No, anytime you do a copy and a paste, there should be a pause. You need to take a deep breath, let it out, and look at everything you copied and pasted and make sure that you didn't screw that up. Because I've done this a million times. Every experienced programmer has done copy paste errors a million times. Lots of students today were making copy paste errors on the assignment because there's a lot of fields. There's Pokedex and attack and speed and all that stuff in the full assignment. Yeah, so don't do this. So right here, this guy needs to turn into attack. And then the fourth column is also an integer, which is defense. And that will read all four columns out of the first string stream. Now we need to move on to the second one, and we need to get the types out of it. Now, as students in the lab section, you might be wondering, why do we not have the interactive dialogue with the students? Well, because OBS decided to randomly switch the screen it was recording off of to another screen. So I had to discard the lecture from today and just record a new one from scratch. Oh, it'll be a little bit more fast-paced this way, I guess. I don't know, less downtime. So the most column, look, we have a copy-paste error right here. This is not the third column. This is, in fact, the fourth column. All right. So next up, we need to grab data out of the other string stream. So the other string stream is named STS2. I apologize, it's not a great name. I don't know. This one's STS1, STS2. They sound like space shuttle names or something. I don't know. String stream 1, string stream 2. I don't know. I got nothing. I'm sorry. So when I asked students to do, I want, the fifth column, they did this. And so they said, this is the response I got from everybody. Nobody got this one right. And that's fine. That's why we do interactive learning. Okay, so they did this. In fact, some of them did this, right? So they just copy pasted essentially and said, all right, write into type 1, stoy, read line, okay. And maybe they change that to STS2, right? So what that's going to do, it's going to read from the second string stream, this guy here. It's going to read until there's a tab, so it's going to read the 1. It's then going to return that string containing the string, double quote 1, double quote. It then converts that 1 into a number 1, and then tries storing that number into a string, which is not an integer. So we did a string to integer and then tried to store it into a string. This is bad. This is really bad. So don't do this. So some students were like, all right, we'll just do that instead. This is still bad because 1 is not grass. We're trying to actually get grass. We're trying to touch grass. We're not trying to actually put 1 or these are actually redundant because they're actually, you see this? They're actually up here. We actually already have the Pokedex in the name already. Now, what I do in my implementation is I actually check to make sure that they match, so that if the files don't synchronize properly, then I throw an error. I'm like, nope, you're types.txt does not match Pokemon.txt. But for this assignment, we need to actually just discard. We need to just discard column 1 and column 2 because what we really want is column 3. And so since streams are streams, they go in order, we have to just read out the first 2 columns. And so the first column, we could do string Bob is equal to readline sts2 until a tab. So this is going to read into a variable named Bob, and we don't do anything with Bob, so it throws it away. But here's the cool thing. We can actually just call readline like that. And that's the first column. That's the second column. The function returns a string, and we say, oh, thank you, and we put it in the trash. And then they hand us another string containing Bulba, and we're like, oh, thank you. And we put that in the trash. So we're give me the next column of data. Like, oh, here you go. And they're like, thank you, trash, right? And so now we get to the part where we actually, care about the data, right? So the third column here contains the first type, grass or fire or whatever, or Camilla, which is technically gonna explode us this time. Why do we have 2 of these? Why do we have a duplicate? Go away. Okay. And then the fourth column looks like this. And for people that are like, I don't think Vim makes you more productive. Yeah. I could just type all that from scratch. I spend most of my time coding, thinking, not typing. Yeah, you're wasting time. Sorry. You really are. There's a lot of copying and pasting and changing in computer science. And if you're doing that all by hand, you are wasting so much of your life. I didn't do computer science. I could do tedious stuff. I did computer science to do cool stuff. All right. So yeah, that looks good. So again, I copy pasted and I just had a moment like, all right, I change type 1 to type 2, change the third to a fourth. This looks fine. I think we're good. Okay. And so if no exception was thrown in this whole process here, then and we didn't hit the end of file, no error occurred, then we add that Pokemon named temp to our Pokemon database. And then we go back up and read the next line of code. And so we're going to read 1 line at a time from 2 files, split them by column using tab delimited format like this. It's read until the next tab, read until the next tab, read until the next tab, read until the next tab. And we put them all into this blank Pokemon named temp. And if everything comes in, it gets a name, it gets a strength, it gets a defense, attack, defense, type. Then we're golden. And if this is blank, it's blank, who cares? That's what it should be. And then we're going to go and print out everything. So if this worked, then we are probably good to go. That should be about it. And there we go. So we've got Bulba, attack 90, defense 50, type 1 grass. You see we've merged together the 2 files. Pretty easy. Pokedex 2, Ivysaur, attack 110. Good. Scroll down. Chameleonaire has got attack of 1,000. He's fire type. And then Pokedex 6 is Charizard, attack 2,000, defense 6,000, fire and flying types. Cool. You can see that the error in here was thrown away, it was discarded. And that's good practice. Like if you've got, you got to clean your data a lot of times. And so here we've just got random corrupted data. We just throw it away and move on to the next line, and we're good to go. So that's it. That's basically your homework assignment. That's how you should be doing things whenever you need to read from 2 files at once. There is one tricky bit on the moves.txt part, which I didn't actually do it this time. There is a dash in the data file, but it's not a dash. That's a dash. That's a hyphen. This is actually M dash. You see that? You see that change there? You see that change? It's an M dash. It is not a dash. It is an M dash. And so if you're trying to like specifically like have code that handles that, which you shouldn't need to, because if you have a try catch block that catches the error, you'll be fine. But if you are trying to do something like, if your attack is equal to that, don't do a hyphen, do an M dash, right? So they're not the same, not the same character. your if statements are not going to work if you are hunting for a hyphen, because it's not a hyphen. So look out. All right. That's the only tricky bit. If you're doing this approach here, then the thing will just throw. Anytime any of the moves have a hyphen, it'll just throw an exception, and it'll discard it anyway. So you should be fine with this approach. Just make sure that any special moves also get discarded. I think all of them have a hyphen in them somewhere, I think. Not positive about that. You should probably check if the type of the move is special. You discard that as well. But basically, anytime an error occurs, when you're expecting a number, you don't get a number, discard the move on to the next one. You're good to go. This is basically your homework assignment. It's not exactly your homework assignment, but it's like close to your homework assignment. So if you have brain power and you've got intelligence and you understand the coding, you should be able to adapt this into the successful solution pretty easily. All right. That's it for today. Good luck on Pokemon. I'll be around. Ask me any questions you guys have. And peace. See you next time.